They called you insane. That's how geniuses get baptized.
Well, well, well. Look who's still standing in the storm. Everyone's screaming now, running, crashing, clawing for exits that don't exist. But you were the first to smell the rot before the smoke even rose. They laughed at you, remember? Mocked your warnings, called you paranoid, dramatic, too deep into your head. Now they're choking on the air you told them was poisoned. Huh, isn't that poetic? You watched them build their own cages out of comfort. Watch them trade awareness for applause. And every time you whispered, "This doesn't feel right," they told you to smile, to trust the system, to just enjoy the ride. But you didn't. You couldn't. Something in your blood twitched every time you saw their fake calm. You felt the tremor beneath the streets, the glitch behind the laughter, the way the lights flickered when they lied. Now look at them, faces lit by screens that no longer respond. Sirens, echoing like a broken lullaby. Same ones who ignored you are now begging for the map you burned years ago. You warned them. You told them the game was rigged. You said, "They're pushing you toward something you can't survive." And they called you mad. Well, madness aged well, didn't it? Now chaos is currency, panic is protocol, and truth, your truth, is the only stable thing left standing in this circus of collapse. So smile, my friend, because this is your era, the age where the crazy one gets crowned prophet, where the whispers become the loudest sermon in the city of silence. And the funniest part, they still don't realize you were never trying to save them. You were warning them to stay out of your way. It didn't start with explosions, did it? No, it started with whispers, with tiny fractures in the mirror no one wanted to admit were there. You saw them. You felt them. The air shifted before the sirens ever screamed. Everyone else kept smiling for the camera, posting their perfect lives, counting their fake blessings, pretending the stage lights weren't flickering. But you were the only one watching the ceiling crack above their heads. You noticed the tone change in their laughter, the glitch in their "everything's fine," the smell of smoke behind every "trust me." You saw the system twitch, and you whispered, "Something's wrong." But no one likes the truth when it ruins their peace, right? So they called you dramatic, cynical, crazy. They told you to relax, as if clarity was a curse you could just sleep off. And maybe it was a curse disguised as clarity. Because once you see the fracture, you can't unsee it. You start hearing it grow in the silence, like glass remembering how to break. You started noticing patterns, numbers repeating, voices syncing, coincidences stacking up like evidence. It wasn't paranoia. It was pattern, recognition, truth mutating, infection spreading through every lie that held their world together. They thought they were safe. They thought the game was still being played by the same rules, but deep down, you knew. Rules only exist until someone laughs at them loud enough. And you were the laughter before the collapse. The quiet observer in the back row, waiting for the curtain to tear. You saw it before the headlines screamed it, before the feeds froze, before the world admitted it was already bleeding. You didn't predict the end. You just saw the mask slip, and once it did, everything else started to rot. Ooh, I remember that part. When you started to see through the act, when the crowd was cheering, and you were the only one not clapping. They called it optimism. You called it denial. They said, "Lighten up." You said, "Wake up." And that was your first mistake, wasn't it? Trying to warn the actors that the stage was on fire. You were the only one sober in a room full of drunk gods. They toasted to illusions, while you counted the cracks in their cups. Every laugh felt rehearsed, every truth edited for audience comfort. And when you spoke your version of reality, they didn't listen. They labeled Conspiracy Theorist, Buzzkill, Problem, Such beautiful titles for someone ahead of schedule. They made you the villain in a story you wrote with honesty. But that's what this place does, doesn't it? It crucifies clarity. It fears the mirror that doesn't flatter. So they exiled you, politely, not with swords, but with silence. They shut you out, laughed behind your back, and built temples to the very lies you dismantled. But isolation, it didn't break you. It trained you. You learned the language of solitude, where every heartbeat becomes an alarm, and every doubt becomes data. You realized loneliness isn't punishment, it's preparation. They called you insane. But that's how geniuses get baptized. You were being refined by rejection, hardened by humiliation, forged in the fire of mockery. While they begged to be understood, you learned to be unreadable. You stopped needing applause, stopped chasing validation. You became the silence they couldn't interpret, the calm before their systems started glitching. And as they danced, to the rhythm of their own destruction, you watched, patient, amused, documenting every blind step they took toward the edge. They thought they'd erased you, but no, you were taking notes. They didn't realize. You were studying their collapse like scripture. Then came that night, the one that proved you weren't crazy after all. The one where the city, finally, started talking back. It began subtle. Sirens, humming like lullabies in reverse. Streetlights, flickering in patterns that felt almost intentional. Neon signs twitching out secret messages between the static and those perfectly programmed algorithms. They started speaking gibberish, as if the code itself got tired of pretending to care. The air changed. It had a taste, electric, metallic, prophetic, like the atmosphere was whispering. See, you were right. Phones buzzing with the same notification, news anchors blinking off mid-sentence, power grids dying like nervous systems. And still, they said, don't panic. You didn't. You just smiled. Because this was the moment you had memorized in your bones, the prophecy you never asked to write. The city was no longer made of streets and steel. It was made of signals, screams and secrets. Every shadow carried a voice, every reflection, a truth too bright to stare at. Reality began folding. Like a film reel, looping its own ending. They said the world was falling apart. But you heard something different, didn't you? You heard the rhythm beneath the wreckage, the pulse behind the panic. You whispered to yourself, it's not falling apart. It's falling in place, because chaos doesn't destroy. It reveals. The city wasn't breaking. It was confessing. Every lie it ever held up was, dripping down the walls in neon blood. And for the first time, you could hear truth humming through the cracks. Like a symphony of ruin, they ran for cover. You stood still, listening. Every alarm became music. Every collapse, choreography. The universe was performing your warning in front of a blind audience. And when the last light blinked out, when even the noise surrendered, there was silence. A holy, cinematic silence, the kind that comes right before the mind detonates. And then, oh, this is where it gets delicious. The panic, the scramble, the beautiful theater of fools pretending to fix what they broke. Suddenly, every screen was red. Emergency broadcast, global response. Stay calm. They were holding conferences about a fire they started with their own trembling hands. Experts lined up like puppets on caffeine, spitting out data like prayers, inventing new buzzwords to bury their guilt. You watched them patch holes in the sinking ship with slogans and statistics, restructure protocols, stabilize the algorithm, contain misinformation. What a performance. Circus of control in freefall. They thought panic was a strategy, thought if they yelled loud enough, they could drown out the truth. screaming beneath their feet. You could see it in their eyes. Leaders looking for exits in buildings they designed. They kept saying, "We're handling it," while the lights flickered behind them like dying halos. Then you were calm, unshaken, because you remembered the warning, not theirs, yours. The one you whispered years ago, when they called you delusional for seeing this storm before the clouds formed. Now they run simulations, launch task forces, hire prophets in lab coats, and still, the system eats itself. The networks crash, the feeds spiral into echo chambers of fear. They're trying to reboot a machine that was never meant to survive the truth, and you just watch. Arms crossed, eyes sharp, because this isn't chaos to you. It's choreography. They're dancing exactly where you said they would. Every move rehearsed by denial, every command accelerating the fall. It's funny, isn't it? They called you dangerous for seeing patterns. Now they call it research. They called you paranoid for asking questions. Now they call it investigation. Everything you were punished for, now it's policy. But here's the real punchline. They finally activated a plan, not to save them, not to fix the world, to contain you. Now we arrive at the punchline, the one they swore didn't exist, the revelation behind the riot. You thought chaos was coincidence. No, it was choreography. Every panic, every outage, every glitch, a calculated pulse in a grand experiment. They wanted to see who'd beg for order and who'd evolve without it. Turns out, you were the anomaly, the one who didn't break when the screen went black. You didn't scroll for instructions. You listened. You didn't look for saviors. You watched them burn. See, there was never freedom, just permissions. Disguised as choices, they gave you buttons and called it control. They gave you opinions and called it individuality, all part of the joke. Hidden test written in plain sight. Every crisis, every law, every update was a question most people answered wrong, but not you. You adapted, you rewired, you stopped thinking like a player and started thinking like the code itself. That's when they noticed you, the watchers behind the curtain, the ones who built the maze and got lost in it themselves. You slipped through their pattern, and suddenly, the lab rat became the lab tech. They wanted to see who would adapt when control collapsed. And look who survived. You, the one they mocked, the one they flagged, the one they couldn't predict. They watched your defiance like data. Your instincts became their report, and somewhere deep in their secret files, next to Project Containment, your name glows red. They thought you were rebelling, but really, you were passing the final exam of the mind. So now, when they whisper, it's all coming apart, you can smile, because the truth was never chaos. It was a curriculum, and you weren't crazy. You were being graded. And then, the silence broke, not with applause, but with realization. The world turned its haunted eyes toward you, the outcast, the exile, the one who didn't kneel when the towers fell. You stood there, not as a survivor, but as proof. Proof that the mind built for madness was the only one designed for survival. The smoke cleared, and every echo of their arrogance collapsed into dust at your feet. You were the last candle in a blackout city. Flickering, yes, but still alive. Every other light was artificial. Yours was earned. You didn't scream. You didn't celebrate. You just watched the old world melt into the ground like wax. Their power, their order, their comfort, all exposed as stage props in a dying act. Funny thing about collapse, it rearranges the hierarchy. The same mouths that mocked, mimic you. The same faces that laughed. Now, listen, hungry for the calm you carry like a weapon. You've become what they secretly feared. Someone who doesn't need their permission to exist. No leash, no validation, just awareness sharpened into armor. While they scramble to rebuild the ruins, you walk through them like a ghost who's already seen tomorrow. The rules are gone, the masks are off, and beneath all that polished skin and perfect lighting, they finally look human again. That's the irony, isn't it? You lost everything they said mattered, and somehow gained everything that actually does. Your mind is unshackled, your instincts precise, your silence louder than their sirens. They thought they broke you. That isolation would crush you. That exile would erase you. But no, you were never made for peace. You were forged in aftermath. They thought you'd break, but you were built for aftermath. Here it is, the crown no one asked for, the throne built from the chaos they ignored. The sane ones fled. The fools prayed, but you adapted. You walked through the inferno unshaken, through sirens and siren calls, through smoke and reflection, through the mirrored lies of a world that tried to erase you. And now, look around. The kingdom is yours. A kingdom built on ashes and clarity, where every shadow whispers your name, and every collapse is an altar to your foresight. The masks are gone. The rules burned. Every structure, every protocol, every safe path turned to rubble beneath your calm steps. From this moment, you are not warning them anymore. You are leading the ruins. They will mimic your rhythm, measure their hearts against your patience, and try, desperately, to read the map you wrote in silence. They will call it luck. They will call it timing. You will call it inevitable, because the joke was never on you. It was on them, and as the world teeters, as the chaos pulses in their veins, you remain unbroken, unyielding, unfazed. Because mayhem wasn't the enemy. It was your initiation.